So welcome back and hello if you are new. As I'm sure you can tell, I look a little bit like a lobster because I was at 2000 Trees yesterday. It was a fantastic day, but my God, it was hot. So I am literally like hiding in the shade in London at the minute. So I thought, what better time than to do my top albums of 2022 so far list. So I'll be real with you, I'm awful at trying to narrow down stuff that I think is really good and deserves a mention. So there's quite a lot of albums on this list, but I'm going to keep things fairly quick. I'm also going to do this in alphabetical order because I don't necessarily think that there's any one which is kind of, you know, stronger than the others at the minute. I also want to keep the suspense a little bit, you know, because we've still got 6 months left. And I think the latest one is on the 1st of July. So that's probably a little clue, but that was my cutoff, like end of June, 1st of July, basically. So without further ado, let's dive into my top albums of 2022 so far. So first up is A with Allegion. So Allegion released their brand new album, Damnum. I thought this was probably the most accomplished release the band had put together. It was literally everything that Allegion have done, but in high definition. It was also the most collaborative effort from the band to date, which I think is a massive deal. There's a lot of different stuff happening on this record, and I think that this is where Allegion really are getting those keys to go big. Next up is Astronoid with Radiant Bloom, and I enjoyed their previous record, but this one absolutely blew me away. This has been almost like a shoulder to cry on, but let's just say in the last sort of couple of months. Excellent songwriting, the performance is amazing, and it has this sense of unbridled euphoria with a resigned melancholy to it as well. It's like nothing you'll hear this year, guaranteed. Next up is Blood Incantation with Time Wave Zero. So this, I think no one really would have predicted that Blood Incantation would come back with an ambient LP, but this has just been such a fantastic record. And I think, you know, after chatting to Paul and Morris and understanding even more about what this band stand for, this is merely just the second phase. But what I love the most about this record is that it just always acts as almost like, you know, a gateway into escape, and I can just kind of turn the world off and just listen to this. It's been my go-to relax and drift out into the void record this year. Now we come to Cave In with Heavy Pendulum. This album wasn't immediate, I'm not gonna lie. It took a few listens, and because it's quite a long runtime, I was a bit like, I don't know if I can be bothered. But I have not stopped coming back to this album. There was something that clicked, and you know, it's just everything that you would want from a Cave In record. Like I said, you know, I'm fairly new to, you know, Cave In as a band, but I feel like, you know, Final Transmission was kind of a glimmering star. Then, you know, Heavy Pendulum is like a fucking supernova. It's heavy, melodic, incredibly well written, and one of the most well put together records you'll hear this year. After that we come to Conjurer with Pathos or Pathos. I can still not remember how to say it. Dark, brutal, and incredibly unforgiving. This isn't the easiest listen, but it is one that improves with every single listen. The band really upped the ante on where they were on Maya, and I think this is really Conjurer going high def. After that we come to Cult of Luna and The Long Road North. So if The Revenant was made into a metal record, I reckon it would sound very much like this. It's cinematic, it's everything that Cult of Luna have put together. There's some really interesting guest spots, and for quite some time this year it was my front runner for album of the year. It really sounds like nothing else. Not only nothing else this band have put out, but nothing else I think we've heard in many years. Cult of Luna, I think, have proved that they are a legendary band, and, you know, they really are one of the post-metal pillars in the genre. This album, again, wasn't necessarily a first sort of initial impression. I kind of didn't really like it, to be honest. I thought it was a bit sort of weird and not very decapitated in many ways. But then that's ironically become the appeal of it. I really like the fact that the band are doing something different, but it equally sounds just as much decapitated as, you know, they have since Blood Mantra, Carnival is Forever. I mean, but this one really kind of surprised me. Some cool guest spots as well, which I really liked. But it's just been one that I've been kind of like, oh yeah, I'll just chuck that on, and I keep going back to it. So there must be something in that. Next up is Fit for an Autopsy and Oh What the Future Holds. Definitely not as immediate as the Sea of Tragic Beasts, but incredibly powerful. After I kind of got this record, I think I ended up coming back to it even more than I did Sea of Tragic Beasts. Huge hooks, big riffs, and experimentation are no doubt going to be pushing this band even further forward. Next up we have Ghost with Impera. So following the plague-ridden prequel, Ghost have returned with an even more cinematic experience. And what I really liked about this record is there's a little bit more of a leaning towards the prog and a definite 80s kind of vibe on here. And despite technically not being a huge departure of what we've heard from Ghost, I think this is just them kind of, you know, fine-tuning their sound to be that arena level band. Next up we have Immolation with Acts of God. So when it comes to death metal, I think that Immolation are pretty hard to beat. And the last time that they released an album, I was actually featuring it on my old zine, which was The Metalist. So it's been quite some time. Acts of God brings all the elements that we know and love of Immolation to the forefront, but plays with a darker atmosphere to create one of my favourite albums of 2022. Following multiple festival appearances and multiple shows across the board, I think Malevolence were really hinting at that sort of next level of their career, and they have smashed through the glass ceiling with Malicious Intent. It's the perfect example of how some experimentation, very tight songwriting can really project a band far above their peers, and it's been one that's been on regular rotation since February for me. From the moment that Broken Cog barges down the doors, I knew this was going to be a hell of a record. I don't think it's the most dexterous that Meshuggah have been, you know, since the technicalities of Obzon and things like that, but it's more lugubrious, it's more slow, it feels like you're, you know, kind of like walking through sludge, which I really like. I like that kind of groovy Meshuggah. Not to mention They Move Below, which is an amazing instrumental and one of my favourite Meshuggah songs. I think they really smashed it out of the park with Immutable. So it might have taken 13 bloody years, but we've finally got an album from Porcupine Tree, and it's one of the best this year. I cannot stop listening to this album. It's the perfect combination of just what you would expect from Porcupine Tree, but with a healthy dose of their kind of, you know, new ideas that they've put together whilst being on solo ventures or in other bands. So following up Time Will Die and Love Will Bury It was always going to be a pretty daunting experience, but I think that, again, like quite a lot of bands on this list, I find, Rolo have kind of tightened things up, you know, they understand the dynamics even more and the push and pull of their sound, which is why I think this has been an album that I've come back to so much over this year. When it comes to death metal, there's one band that have been making the headlines for quite some time now, and that is Undeath. And this is their second release on Prosthetic Records. it's time to rise from the grave. And it combines all that stuff I love about old school death metal, but in a new school approach. Excellent songwriting, razor sharp riffs, which basically creates some of the best old school, new school death metal that you'll hear this year. Venom Prison and Erebos. So, without a doubt, the best Venom Prison album this band has ever put out. I love the fact that they literally were just like, do you know what? Fuck it, we're going to do whatever we want. And they've thrown caution completely to the wind. And that, for me, really has worked in their favour. Because I think there's so much going on this album. There's so much progressive ideas. And, you know, the fact that there's a fucking clean singing, you know, song on here was something I would have never really expected from Venom Prison. And I love the fact that it was kind of stuff that was being hinted at Samsara that I was really hoping they would kind of try and, you know, really kind of dig into, that they really have on this record. After the all-out fury that was Trident Wolf Eclipse, Watain returned this year with the agony and the ecstasy of Watain, which is, I think, more of a refined look at their sound, rather than the all-out war approach of their previous record. Not without its flaws though, because I think the album is very much in a progressive realm. There's definitely that signature Watain aggression, but it's just a little bit more refined. There's a little bit more going on, and there's also some really, really cool guest spots on this record. After this, we come to White Ward, which is, again, another fairly new release. It's a really, really fantastic album. The band first kind of came onto my radar on Love Exchange Failure when I was just kind of messing about on YouTube, to be honest. And I have fallen in love with them ever since. And False Light, I think, capitalizes on all of the experimentation this band have had, but also pushes them into new boundaries where I think really the kind of world is their oyster when it comes to looking at what they want to do. And I think that's such a great sort of idea to have, and the fact that they're including different instruments, different kind of subgenres to really create their own signature identity. So if you're a fan of black metal, this is not one to miss out. Now, this album was kind of my running for the album of the year for quite some time. It came out in January. I worked on it a little bit, and then I left that company that I was working with. But so, long story short, what I mean is I've heard it for a long time, and I absolutely love Epigon. I think that it unfairly got a bit of stick for not being as good as Veil of Imagination, but I personally think this is one of the most creative records I've heard this year. There's, in all honesty, I don't think anyone like Wilderun out there. I think the way that they combine the cinematic elements of their sound and the metal stuff really is second to none, because that's something that could really go wrong very easily. I don't know, it's currently very much in the top 5, let's just say, maybe top 3. But it's an amazing record that if you're a prog fan, you cannot miss out on this album. So those are my picks. I hope it didn't take too long. I tried to be as quick as I can because I know there's quite a lot of stuff on there. But let me know what you guys think are some of your albums of the year so far. I'd love to hear them, and drop a comment. Let me know what you think of the video and what I've missed. You know, because there's 1,000 albums that are released like every week now. Anyway, I'll be coming back with an album review of Wake and also Imperial Triumphant's brand new album. So make sure you stick around for them. Please do like and subscribe this video because it does help. I hate saying it, but I'm a YouTuber, so I have to. And take care of yourselves, and I will see you very soon. Take care, my friends.